Hello and welcome along to another episode of this Stadium Review series, Review the 92. Following a week off, we are back, Thomas Sunburn, and we are ready to go as we go and move on through the alphabet to W and West Bromwich Albion. So today we will be talking about the Hawthorns, ranking it on its key areas, and talking about our experience there as we visited for a League Cup tie at the start of the 2018-19 season. But firstly, as always, let's do the stats. If you are looking forward to this one, chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for daily FM20 content and weekly episodes from this series, which will hopefully continue after next week if we're allowed back into football grounds at some point soon. In the Football League, that is. However, the stats of the Hawthorns first. So firstly, the stadium itself, back to old school this week because it was opened in 1900. One of the older grounds of the series again. It has been heavily renovated between 82 and 2001 for various stands across the ground. Plenty of money invested in that as well. It's got a capacity currently of 26,688, and it also has a record attendance somehow of 64,815, which was back in 1937. And obviously, the probably quite well-known but key interesting fact about the ground is that at an altitude of 551 feet, it is the highest ground above sea level in the Football League. So, we visited in 2018, a sunny August evening, to watch West Brom v Luton in the Carabao Cup First Round. We were, of course, coming back up to League One. West Brom were coming back down to the Championship. And it was a pretty crap game, if I'm being honest. So, Tom, tell me about your initial experience.
Yeah, I think it was my first trip to Birmingham, taking a big city off the list, getting around the country. It was good for that reason. We stayed the night, didn't we? I'm guessing it was midweek, was it? If it was a League Cup game.
It was, yeah, it was Tuesday night.
I said I was going to make the weekend of it, but it couldn't be the case. But we made a little trip of it anyway. I think of the game itself, I thought Luton held their own, which I thought bode well for the season because they're playing against a higher division opposition.
And we had a few changes that day as well, to be fair.
And we looked quite good. I think we lost by 1 goal, maybe?
Yeah.
1-0 to West Brom.
Correct.
There was a lot of speculation at the time about Jack Stacey moving to West Brom.
Yeah.
Which thankfully didn't happen. Oh, and we saw the silly mascot.
Yes, that was at the time of that starting off, wasn't it? So.
Was that, what is it? Dishwasher?
Boiler.
Idealboilers.com
or whatever it's called.
That's probably the highlight of the game for me.
I mean, I think the fact that that's your highlight of the day probably explains that it wasn't the best game and the best experience we're going to have in this file. It was a decent test for us, as you say, because we were coming up against a top championship side. And for us going into League One, we didn't know at the time that we were going to be promotion contenders and eventually title winners. And with a rotated squad, we didn't look it on that day. The one thing I remember about the game was Nathan Jones randomly switched to a back three that day, which we didn't look comfortable in at all first half. As you mentioned, Jack Stacey was on his way out then, but thankfully stayed for the rest of the year. Got himself a Premier League move, which hasn't worked out, unfortunately. And for us, obviously got us into the Championship. The main positive for me, I guess, remembering the day, before we move on to the key areas, was for about 3 hours before kickoff. I don't know if you remember, we spent time in a lovely pub by the canal. Because obviously that's one of the most famous parts of Birmingham. And most of our walk there was pleasantly through canals as well.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what we did. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. We did stop. We sat outside as well overlooking the canal, having a drink. That was nice. Nice walk. Enjoyed it. And what sticks in my mind, I just thought about this. I think you just said that you'd made your YouTube channel. And I thought, no way is the least technical person I know decided to start having a go at YouTube.
It was about 2 weeks after the first video on this channel, I believe. So, yeah, it was an interesting time. I didn't know it was going to be part of a series on it 2 years down the line. So
no. Has it grown since then? Have you developed as a podcaster, YouTuber since then?
Well, we're doing this via Zoom meetings, so something's obviously happened since then. I think for me, as we move towards atmosphere and the 4 key areas, the bit that I remember before the game being really annoyed about was the walk. Obviously, we had a hotel in the city centre. Walking around, it wasn't the most pleasant place to walk around for a little while. But actually, I'd argue when we went to the Coventry one a few weeks later, it was a lot better. I remember that we got lost in the canals and ended up walking to a random little metro station, which probably wasn't the main entrance. But from there, the public transport links were cheap and easy, so that was all good. But atmosphere of the game is going to be the hardest to judge it on, isn't it? Because it was a Carabao Cup tie. For West Brom coming down out of the Premier League, the first round, there were 10,000 fans there. And while we have to give it a ranking on what we saw, it's never going to be a fair reflection on West Brom.
No. I think maybe you'd call it a controversial opinion. I think with what's happening in the world and a condensed fixture list, and people are always saying the FA Cup's lost its magic, I think we should reduce the league season to one cup, the FA Cup, and kind of get rid of the League Cup, I'm afraid to say, even though it's the only trophy Luton have won, and they've just had, potentially, if they beat Reading, they're going to have United in the next round of it. So it's all quite exciting, but that's just the norm now, isn't it?
Yeah.
10,000 in a 30,000 seater stadium is just what we expect to see on a Tuesday night when a bigger club gets drawn at home to lower league opposition, and we're getting used to it, but you don't really want to see empty seats in stadiums. So I think it's a shame, but it's what you expect now.
I mean, to be brutally honest, how the tables have turned, we'd all be delighted to see 10,000 in the stadium for a Carabao Cup tie now, wouldn't we? But unfortunately, it's not to be. So I completely disagree with your view on the second cup being abolished, but you're a big team fan saying that, so I can understand the opinion of it. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, they've reduced the semi-finals to one leg this year, which is a positive. But for me, atmosphere, I don't really know what to rank it, to be brutally honest, because there was, I would argue, next to no atmosphere there. There were just under 1,000 Luton fans. The home fans were clearly not generally your boisterous season ticket holders who wanted a big evening out. I don't know where to put it. If I'm ranking it on that fixture, it's going to be awful. It's going to be like a 4 or something like that. Probably not even that, if I'm being honest. But it's no reflection on the Hawthorns, and I feel very guilty doing it.
Yeah, but what can we do? That is our only experience of the Hawthorns, and you could probably socially distance quite safely in the game we went to. So
I think we were at the time.
That speaks volumes. So yeah, we have almost quite reluctantly have to base it off of the game we went to, which was people still on summer holidays. As you said, it was August. People away with the family.
Yeah.
All these factors come into it. Give it a 5, which is almost generous, I think.
Yeah, I think you're still playing the mind game in the background. On that night, I have to give it a 4. I can apologise to any West Brom fans that watch this. I know that's not a reflection of your atmosphere, but unfortunately, because you've been successful under Slaven Bilic, I can't even judge it again next season if we're allowed back. So, unfortunately for me, it's going to be 4 for a little while, but we will get to another game in a league game eventually. However, after that, we move on to location. Now, it's quite a difficult one for us because we weren't staying near the West Brom ground. We weren't staying in the area. We were staying in Birmingham City Centre. But the transport links were so easy. The transport for us to get from the south of the country, from Milton Keynes, for example, to Birmingham is very cheap. I know that's not the route you took, I don't think, at that time. But for us...
Just trying to think. Yeah, did I meet you in Birmingham?
I think you normally did. But for me, it was so cheap and easy that I don't think I can rank it down for not being in or near the Birmingham City Centre, because the Hawthorns itself, it was an easy place to get to and from. The nearest station wasn't a million miles from the ground. And for us who were staying in at night time, it was easy to get back from. So I don't think we can have any complaints.
No, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the one where the train back was a tiny platform?
Oh, you're right. No,
fans
you're
on
right.
Both sides. It was like ridiculously organised.
We were crammed, and it was a tiny away attendance and a tiny home attendance. I remember that because we were on a platform at about 10:15, and there was literally like a line of whoever, it wasn't just staff at that station, holding people back and taking them onto each one. Yeah, and you just thought, how on earth would that work for a league game? You're absolutely right.
Just remember that, yeah, and exactly like we said about Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, for the tram,
it didn't look good for a tiny attendance. So what do they do when they have like Birmingham City or next season?
They were holding fans at the top, weren't they? At the entrance.
Yeah, it was. That was. I wouldn't say it was bad because it was, but it was kind of. How would you say? What would you say about it? It was just a bit.
It was
surprising that
on both platforms. Yeah.
They made it look like, maybe like 50,000 fans were coming out of the ground, whereas it was 10. You said. So.
Well, as you said, you could have easily socially distanced in the ground at that night, but you wouldn't have been able to do it there. Let's put it that way.
No,
I don't know if they put on extras in the league games, maybe, but I don't know.
That might need looking into, yeah.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that. So that would be my slight down blotch on it. But otherwise, the prices were very good, and for us, it was cheap. I mean, I don't think there's any negative. And then it wasn't a huge walk once you got to the nearest station to the ground. It was only
Was
about
it
10 or 15 minutes.
was it a local train? Was it a tram? What kind of transport did we take? I think it was like a
I think it was a
a
little
local
train.
train.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of stops out of Birmingham, like city centre. Yeah, as you said. No, that was straightforward. Just maybe again poorly organised after the game.
So I think based on the bit that you've reminded me of there, I'd probably just edge it down to a 7, because otherwise I was going to say it's all good. It's an easy walk. It's an easy route. But yeah, that was a slight inconvenience, and we didn't get on the first train. We got on the second, which meant we had to wait an extra 5 or 10 minutes. So on a quiet night, that is a worry, but I'd give it a 7 still.
Yeah, that seems fair. I'll match you. 7. And yeah, I'm glad I remembered that because I think evidently I slipped your mind and I just thought, yeah, am I right in thinking that was the game?
It has ruined it a bit though, because after the atmosphere, I was trying to be generous the rest of the way along to match it up, but can't be there. But we move on to value next, and I think we will be able to on this occasion. So adult prices for the game was £10. And again, as you've said, league games, it's never going to be the same. In fact, while you're giving your opinion on that, I will look to see what the league fixture was last season. But for us on that night, it was £10. And as we did with Norwich and Newcastle for FA Cup ties, you can only judge it on the price, can't you? And £10 for any game of football involving two EFL clubs is very good.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna completely contradict myself and you're right. Maybe that is the luxury of supporting a big club like Arsenal. I can say I don't think there should be a second cup. I get smaller clubs. It's amazing for them to go on a bit of a run, but at £10 it encourages maybe people that don't get a chance to see their team play or can't afford it otherwise. You could take if it's £10 for an adult, then I don't know what it is for youngsters, but you could take your family to watch a live game, whereas maybe normally no chance of getting a ticket, and if you had the chance, you couldn't afford it. So that is the good thing. That's the saving grace for me. That is something. And I actually, for me, before I could afford to go to league games at Arsenal, I was quite happy to take the third round of the League Cup when Wenger used to play with the teenagers and gave me an opportunity to definitely get a ticket for a game. So I'm contradicting what I said before slightly, and yeah, £10 is fantastic price, isn't it? Yeah, so have to give it a 10 out of 10 for that.
Absolutely, and you're just proving your point, aren't you? Which is what's wrong with us and all the world is we want to stop the opportunity for the next generation that we all have. But I've just checked the league fixture as well this year in the Championship, and that was 20 as well, which is, I would argue, quite generous by Championship league standards as well. So even on that, I probably would have given it a 9. So
yeah, you're talking a yo-yo club. I'm not going to call them a Premier League club because they never really established themselves when they get the chance, but they're definitely a yo-yo team, and they finished obviously second, didn't they? In the end, they nicked second place on the last day. So we're talking a big team in that league. So well done for West Brom for those competitive ticket prices, I think you can call them.
Absolutely. Cheaper than Stevenage, and obviously we paid 10 on the night we went, so 10 out of 10 for me. And even if it had been a league game, the atmosphere would have been higher, but that would still be a 9. So fantastic from West Brom. And finally, we move on to character. Now, this is a bit of a harder one because the ground, as we mentioned, is really one of the oldest ones, but it's sort of been renovated so much that when you get there, you feel the impression of a modern stadium, don't you?
Yeah. I think anything different or that sticks in my mind, I don't know if it's if I like it or disliked it, but it's something I've not forgotten. I think as we were sat behind one goal, along the stand to our left, there's almost like words to, I don't know if it's like a hymn or a poem or a song, kind of like I guess Watford have that, don't they? But
yes,
yeah, West Brom had. You look quite blank there. You don't remember that? No, I'm sure they did. That's all that sticks in my mind. It didn't have much character, if I'm being honest. Maybe too many renovations, too much development has seen to that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I do remember is that all of the bar stands behind one goal on one side, there's 3 different heights. So like one stand on one side, one stand the other, and the goal, it sort of like goes gradually down. So we've got to give it that. The corners are a little bit covered, so you can't really see out too much, which is something that obviously they've done to increase the capacity as they've gone along. Most grounds, they do fill in the corners where they stay there. One of the stands outside the ground has got the old-fashioned brickwork still, where like the main reception and things and that are. But we never really got the chance to see that because it was a Tuesday night. So
that's a shame. That sounds quite nice, but have you seen that on Google? Have you?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the pictures from the outside, it looks a bit more authentic and old-fashioned out there. But in the ground itself, it looked like a modern stadium. And while it was nice, it still had the touch. And as I say, the different height stands, I wouldn't say anything leapt out.
It's a shame we didn't see that then. Again, I guess we weren't really treating when we went to games as like with our groundhopper cap on, like properly taking it in. I think it was obviously we'd have got there quite late at the evening game, just found our seat and gone again. So didn't really soak it in and see maybe the nicer sides of the ground. So can only apologise that we missed out on the character. Maybe that's our fault. Maybe there's character and we just didn't take it in.
Well, to be fair, it's probably a good thing because if we tried to do that after the game, God knows what time we would have got home with those train situations afterwards. So
yeah, it might have been an expensive Uber.
So for me, I don't think I can give it higher than 6 because for me it was just okay, and that would be my okay score. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Again, accepting the mitigating factor that I may have missed something incredible, as I'm sure you will admit to.
Yeah, I think this is the most we've matched each other, I'd say, ever. I think there's just going to be 3 out of 4. I'm going to give it the same as you, 6.
We certainly haven't done so for a while, so that's interesting that we're in agreement now. I guess it is probably, I think I would say out of this series, this is probably one of my, even though it's quite recent compared to some, it's probably one of my vaguest memories of a football ground itself. And I don't know whether that says something for itself.
It's quite nondescript, wasn't it, all round? The game was easily forgettable.
Didn't help.
No atmosphere. It was an evening game. We just turned up, went home straight away, like back to the hotel. We didn't have a walk around. It was, you're right. It was just over 2 years ago, but it's not the freshest in my mind, considering it's not that long ago in the great scheme of things.
No. So yeah, we've given it the best that I feel we can. The atmosphere obviously is a mitigating circumstance. We hope to be able to visit in a league game in the future, because if West Brom continue doing well, it will mean that Luton have made the Premier League, or that Tom's got a ticket for the Arsenal away from home.
Possibly. Did Matty Pearson make his debut in that game? Have I just made that up?
One of Pearson or Bradley did. I think it might have been Pearson, yeah.
There's something to cling on to.
At least there's some sort of vague memories there. But if you did enjoy this one, please do put a thumbs up on it. Obviously, it is one of the ones we're going to need a bit of help. So if you've visited on a day where it's packed for a league game, let us know what your experience was like, anything we missed in and around the ground, and how you found transport from different areas of the country. If you haven't already, subscribe down below for daily FM20 content and another episode from this one next Sunday at the same time. Thank you to my co-host Tom for joining me as always.
Cheers.
And hopefully we'll see you next time.